Hey there, my name's Curtis Lucas and you're watching Empire Building. By now, many of you have probably heard that Marathon Digital Holdings had finally announced that they would be reversing their position on censoring transactions on the Bitcoin network. As well, that they would be signaling support for the new upgrade to Bitcoin's protocol known as Taproot. This was something that was very good to hear, and it does have some broader implications that many people probably don't realize in terms of how it could impact new institutions that are thinking about entering this space and how they behave. I'm also going to talk about what exactly is Taproot and why is this such a big deal. And we'll even address the controversy surrounding Marathon's behavior over the last few months regarding these clean blocks and the delay in them signaling readiness for Taproot. So there's actually a lot that we need to unpack here. We're going to start with the announcement that Marathon actually made on Monday, actually on Memorial Day. They came out on a holiday to address this issue. Marathon signals for Taproot. Marathon mining pool Mara Pool to cease filtering transactions. Marathon Digital Holdings, one of the largest enterprise Bitcoin self-mining companies in North America, announced that the company's Bitcoin mining pool Mara Pool has adopted and implemented Bitcoin Core version 0.21.1. Bitcoin Core version 0.21.1 is the latest update to the Bitcoin client software, which is maintained and updated by a large open source developer community that collaborates to launch new features and fixes. This latest update contains a variety of features, including the Taproot soft fork, which are designed to improve privacy, improve scalability, and lay the groundwork for future enhancements to Bitcoin's functionality. So without going through and reading the entire press release, you can do that on your own. Basically, what's happening here is Bitcoin is looking to fork the blockchain, a soft fork, that would introduce new features. And these new features are going to improve privacy as well as scalability. It's going to reduce the size of some of the transactions that get posted to the blockchain. This reduction in size will allow for additional transactions to be included in the same block, meaning increased capacity. While at the same time, this new feature will allow for multiple transactions to appear as one transaction, which will also coincidentally allow for improved privacy. And this is where we get into the meat of what's going on here. Marathon has been getting a lot of heat for their decision to voluntarily begin to censor transactions. I don't necessarily agree with the term censor, but in effect, that is what they were doing. They were choosing to omit certain transactions that had been flagged as illicit. These are transactions that have originated from wallets that have been verified by Wallet Score as being connected with certain criminal and terrorist organizations. And Marathon, in an effort to shield themselves from certain regulatory scrutiny that may come, they chose to take a preemptive effort to protect their shareholders from such liabilities, or at least that was the intent. That's how they viewed this. Now, the Bitcoin community, understandably, became outraged by this attempt to censor Bitcoin transactions. So what followed became a very heated confrontation between what Michael Saylor refers to as the Bitcoin cyber hornets. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the method in which some of these actors or some of these people actually utilize to achieve their goals, but there is no denying how effective it was. So I'm beginning to understand and appreciate the role that these cyber hornets take in protecting Bitcoin's core tenets. There are certain things about Bitcoin that are going to be very difficult to ever change in the future. The fact that Bitcoin is peer-to-peer, the fact that it is decentralized, the fact that it is censorship resistant, and Most importantly, the fact that no individual person or group gets full say or full control over anything that Bitcoin does. Any changes that are proposed needs to go through a system of consensus involving multiple stakeholders, whether those be nodes, miners, users, wallets, exchanges. All of these groups have to be able to come together to show overall consensus whenever a new change is proposed. No individual group has supreme power. And the cyber hornets play an important role in that. Whenever some change or some movement begins to surface in Bitcoin, if it goes against those core principles, the cyber hornets will unleash a fury of attacks against those attempts. And they are relentless, to the point where I do think it may have been an unfair judgment against Mara. However, extremely effective. My personal viewpoint on this as a shareholder, and yes, I am a significant shareholder in Marathon Digital. So my point of view, let's face it, is somewhat biased. I simply viewed it as Marathon's way of attempting to protect itself or shield itself from potential scrutiny or legal action that could be taken against them from their own respective jurisdictions. And of course, it doesn't help that they were the first to attempt this. And now I do believe they're going to be the last. I'm sure some of the other companies may have been considering this because we know that most of them are still dependent on many Chinese mining pools as opposed to switching over to many North American ones. This is beginning to occur, but it is going to take some time for that transition to take place. If Mara had still been mining in a Chinese mining pool like they were previously, then this would have been a non-issue. But this brings me to the point I want to make about the implications of this. The fact that the cyber hornets won, the fact that Mara bent the knee and finally realized that if you're a company that wants to be involved in this ecosystem, in this community, then it doesn't serve you well to go against the general consensus. You're far better off to embrace this technology in its full, unaltered form than try to mold it according to your own will. You will get nowhere trying to do this. And finding support for those types of decisions is going to be very, very difficult. So this gives me hope and also a newfound appreciation for these cyber hornets. They are critical. They're the guardians of the blockchain. They're going to make sure nobody steps out of line. Because if they do, they're going to be met with incredible resistance and find themselves falling out of favor with the community that they're trying to be a part of. And this is what it means when we say that everyone in Bitcoin has a voice. Even if you aren't a developer or aren't a miner or don't run a node, everybody gets a say. This is what decentralization means. This is why this is so important. And Mara had to learn this the hard way. And this was the message that was sent to me on Twitter, asking me to weigh in on this. As expected, our friend Marapool just mined the first non-signaling block, Red Square. And you can check this out for yourself. There's a link. You can have a look at the progression of the Taproot activation. And yes, the first block in this sequence is Marapool signaling no, meaning they're signaling they are not ready. They're not signaling readiness for the new activation. Now, what's important to note here is that this is a default setting. This is what every mining pool would have started out with. You would have had to actively go in to change this to signal, yes, you are ready, meaning you've taken the necessary steps to prepare for this new upcoming change. Now, what is not accurate about this is not the first block that signaled no. This is the first block in this cycle, which just began last Saturday. But the fact is, this voting period, which is known as a speedy trial, this is a method that they chose to pursue this time. It's something brand new that's never been attempted in Bitcoin that will allow miners to signal whether or not they are ready or will be willing to accept this upgrade, this change. And this voting period actually began on April 24th. So this has been going on for well over a month already. During every 2-week period, every 2016 blocks, which is the period in which Bitcoin measures the hash rate and the speed at which blocks are produced and decides what to adjust the difficulty rate to every 2 weeks. They utilized this period to allow miners to signal through the blocks that they mine whether or not they're ready to accept this new upgrade. So I believe this is actually the third or fourth iteration of this process. So no, this isn't the first block that signaled no. This is just the first block in this particular cycle. But regardless, yes, Mara did signal they were not ready. But I do feel it's important to point out that signaling not ready is not the same as signaling a vote of no. It just means they haven't taken the necessary steps yet in order to signal that they are ready. The fact of the matter is this process, this voting process, is intended to continue until August 11th approximately. And anytime between April 24th and August 11th, if we reach a 2-week block where at least 90% of the blocks in that period signal a state of readiness, then this new Taproot activation, this new Taproot upgrade will proceed. And that activation will occur in November. But of course, this didn't stop the cyber hornets from attacking Mara. And I'm not saying they weren't justified. Some of them may have been a little bit misguided, but I have to say I'm beginning to understand and appreciate that that's not necessarily a bad thing. They still accomplish a very important goal. I only take these opportunities to try to educate people, to help them actually understand how the system actually works and use these as opportunity to improve people's understanding. But I do want to take this opportunity to at least point out that the fact that Mara stands out so obviously in this data stream, it actually makes it very easy to tell how much money they're actually making because for starters, you can have a look. This is a Mara pool block. I believe there's another one. There's another one, 3. That's BCC pool. There's another one, 4. And I think this is also, 5. And this one too, I believe, is also, that's 6 and 7. 7 blocks. I've checked these ones already. There's 7 blocks that Mar has already mined. And you can click on these blocks and even see how much money was earned for that block. Approximately 255,000 at current prices, or at the prices at that time, I believe. So that's approximately $1.75 million since this new adjustment period began, which if we go back, the very first block was mined, I think I mentioned, 3 days ago. So in 3 days, the company, Mara, has mined $1.75 million worth of Bitcoin. Just something I thought I'd point out there. But getting back to the issue at hand, Mara has finally begun to realize that going against consensus, going against Bitcoin's principles will get them nowhere. And the fact of the matter is their attempts to do this were proving to be futile. This new upgrade is going to make Bitcoins more fungible. This whole narrative about clean blocks and blood coins, if you're talking to Kevin O'Leary, it's just not going to work. These institutions that are trying to enter this space are going to have to learn that going against those principles is not going to work. No matter how much they try, the system will reject it. The system being the wallets, even the exchanges, who are institutions, I might add, are going to have to get in line with this. The cyber hornets are never going to let this happen. They will fight tooth and nail to stop this from happening. And most importantly, the nodes and the developers. They will work together to stop any interference with these core principles. And it's important to point out and important to realize that the issue we're talking about here is not that funding terrorist organization and criminal enterprises through Bitcoin usage is desirable. That is not what these people are saying. That's not what they're fighting for. This is extremely important. If you are going to adopt this technology, you have to understand what the benefits are. This narrative of Bitcoin being used for illicit activities has been overblown and debunked time and time again. But even if it is, which I'm not denying it definitely is, but so is the traditional banking system and many other avenues. When you give individuals the power to say which transactions are okay and which ones are not okay, you have no control over how far they take that ability. And here's the risk. Here's what people were afraid could one day happen. If more and more institutional miners that are operating under their own jurisdictions, if they adopt this policy, and I've talked about this before, if say 90% of all the hash power on the network are adopting this policy to exclude transactions, then there's nothing to stop them from excluding transactions that they identify as being from individual countries, making it very even easier for them to impose sanctions on those countries, defeating the entire purpose of Bitcoin. And it's not just the criminals and the terrorist organizations that would be punished for this. The individuals in those countries, the farmers, the fishermen, you name it, anyone that's just trying to live their life and transact in an open marketplace in a way they've never been able to do before. That is the true power that Bitcoin provides. That's the principle. And the fact is, saying that we're only omitting these illicit transactions is really hypocritical because it doesn't actually accomplish anything. The fact is, large criminal enterprises have zero issues with getting money moved around the globe long before Bitcoin came. And the fact is, Bitcoin is not a very good method to conduct those type of transactions in, because if you are ever discovered, there is an entire trail of transactions that investigators could use against you. The effective tools for stopping those kinds of activities is not found in the financial system. It's a ruse used to try to explain to people why we utilize those kinds of weapons against these other nations. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't make anybody any safer. And all it does is damage the economy of the innocent people operating in those places. This is what these cyber hornets are fighting for. They're not fighting for those criminal organizations. They have no problem getting done what they need to get done, Bitcoin or no Bitcoin. What they're fighting for is the innocent people that get caught in the middle of all of this. Bitcoin was made for them, but it was also made for everyone. If those criminal organizations decide to use Bitcoin, in the end, I do believe it will be their downfall, because all they've done is create an immutable chain of events that they will never be able to reverse if they're ever caught. And saying that you're just going to stop those transactions from happening in the first place is obviously ridiculous, and it's never worked. So now we see Mara has finally come around and bent the knee. They're willing to accept Bitcoin for exactly what it is and participate in the community rather than trying to impose their own will and act against the will of the community. This is what the new CEO, Fred Thiel, had to say on the matter when this news was announced on Monday morning.
Hi, I'm Fred Thiel, CEO of Marathon Digital Holdings. I joined Marathon a little over 30 days ago, and while I'm still settling into the role, I want to let everybody know that I am a believer and supporter of the core tenets of the Bitcoin community in regards to decentralization, inclusion, and no censorship. As such, I want to share with you some exciting changes we're making to bring Marathon in line with the rest of the Bitcoin mining industry. This week, Marathon will be updating all our miners to the full standard Bitcoin Core 0.211 node, including support for Taproot. Additionally, I want to make it clear that by adopting the full standard Bitcoin Core node, we will be validating transactions on the blockchain in the exact same way as all other miners who use the standard node, and we will not be censoring any transactions. The rollout will occur as part of a major system migration we're doing this week. I appreciate and am grateful for the support of the community and our fellow miners, and I look forward to being a collaborative and supportive member of the community and to the realization of the shared vision of Bitcoin as the first decentralized peer-to-peer payment network that is powered by its users with no central authority or middlemen. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to updating you on a regular basis via this channel.
So now, as more and more institutional players enter this space, especially as governments start to consider how they're going to regulate this, what we are going to see is a repeat of this. This isn't the last time something like this is going to happen, but now we know what the result of such attempts will be. A paradigm-shifting disruptive force like Bitcoin has very rarely been introduced into a world economy. I mean, the fact is, I would say this has never happened before. This is why people are so excited and passionate about what's occurring. Governments of the world and institutions will no doubt continue to try to attempt to make Bitcoin more palatable for themselves. And it's difficult to say how much success they might eventually be able to achieve, but it will be met with strong resistance. But as far as the way I see it, this is what consensus is. In Bitcoin, you have a lot of different players, a lot of different aspects to the protocol, and how things are going to evolve will be some sort of amalgamated sum of all of those components. It will be a constant power struggle. Bitcoin will be at the middle of that, and all the while indifferent. But somehow, through it all, consensus will always be achieved. Because no matter who the individual players are, as time goes on, Bitcoin will be whatever is necessary to serve consensus. And even governments will only be able to exert a limited amount of control and influence on the system. But one thing is for sure, as time goes on, it is going to be a very interesting space to be involved with. The drama will continue. The internet has been around for 30 years. And in its early days, it also faced similar types of struggles, similar controversies, similar power struggles. But after 30 years, it's been widely accepted in its raw form. There are certain nations around the world that have tried to stifle its innovation, but as a result, their economies have also fallen behind. The nations where they've accepted and embraced the internet has seen their economies benefit as a result. And Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies will be no different. But we do have to go through this painful adolescent phase. But 20 years from now, Bitcoin will be what it was meant to be. And I believe Bitcoin and other aspects of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology will become so intertwined with our daily lives that we will almost not even think about how we're using it. Very similar to the internet today. You'll think about the apps that you're engaged with on a daily basis, but you won't care about what it does or how it does it. All it will matter is the utility that you gain as a result of it. But the journey that we will take from where we are now to where we will be then is going to be extremely fascinating for those who are paying attention. And the best part about it is we all get a say. So I do have a newfound respect for these cyber hornets. I appreciate what they do, and I'm very proud to see that Marathon has decided to embrace this technology in its raw form, the way it was intended. Well, that's all for this one. Now let's get back to empire building.